Amazon is one of the biggest employers in the world, and they just announced that they are cutting jobs. And the thing about Amazon is they're always ahead of the curve. So we're going to discuss what this means for the broader economy.
Yeah, now some of this might be seasonal, of course, but because Amazon does load up, of course, for the holidays. I get it. But Jerry, maybe we can pull up this jobs report because I think a lot of people might have seen this. If you haven't seen this is recent in the Wall Street Journal. But take a look at this chart here. Obviously, job openings went up, and then obviously COVID, and then went down. And now we're at a really, really an all-time low, so a post-COVID low. But really what I want you to focus on is the information at the bottom. So the new data, of course, had about 6.5 million open positions in December. Now, the real issue, of course, is that that's 1 million fewer jobs than a year earlier. So that's good, Jerry. Thank you. So what we have here is we have job openings obviously going up, right? So that's tough. And then at the same time, we got the new administration, which is what we're going to talk about, the housing policies, right? And can people kind of get into these hard assets right now?
Yeah, so I think it's important because, the fact that Amazon is pulling back, and we're going to discuss why that is, but one of the things that a lot of companies right now are not focusing on expansion. They're focusing on more preservation, cutting back. Part of that's due to AI. Part of that is just due to the fact that expansion is expensive right now. Labor is expensive, borrowing's expensive, everything's expensive. So if they're not feeling like they can make money through all of that, then they're going to instead cut back.
Well, it hit what happens, guys, as you know, it hits Main Street first, right? And I would arguably, I would say that's really where they're focusing mostly, and they should. These food costs, fuel costs, all that kind of stuff hits very, very hard. And then of course, obviously that's an inflation, but then it moves into corporate America, Wall Street, which of course Main Street doesn't really care about. But if you own a company, you're a stockholder or whatever, you're trying to be a fiduciary for these entities, which I know you guys all hate. A lot of people hate these, but they have to figure out how to be profitable. And so inflation is creeping in to all of this stuff. And so they're using tech. They're using all these kinds of things to try to figure out how to counterbalance that. Because as Main Street gets wounded, let's say, from these higher costs, so does Wall Street. And so that is pretty much, the talk kind of behind in the boardrooms is how do we reduce costs? I just had a call this morning about this exact thing. How do we keep our company size the way it is, so not laying off, but doubling growth? I mean, that's a fair question. I'm not laying anybody off, but how do we double our growth? And guess how we're doing it? We're doing it through tech. We're applying those at the property levels. We're applying those at the vendor levels. Certainly, we're applying those at the employee level. And even our CFO herself said, I think with good AI and good tech, we should be able to double the amount of properties that one, let's say, staff accountant can handle. So are they doing more work? No. Are they working more hours? No. We're just using, these kind of tools. And so we are personally, now obviously it hits the bottom line. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's really what people are focusing on is how do we grow our revenue? How do we expand our companies? How do we do that without having layoffs? And so that those job report, that number is reflective of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the other thing that you have to account for is the fact that layoffs aren't rising quickly. It's kind of a slow churn. So it's not rapid right now. It's just companies are kind of, I think, choosing to not fill positions that leave a lot of them.
Well, that's what I mean. If we have an accountant that leaves, for example, on their own merit, let's say, we would look to first absorb that using tech, right? So, and so that's kind of what was happening. Is unfortunately, it's, what I say, they go from the bay to the ocean, and the ocean right now is a little bit rough. Like when we're here in the job markets, it's rough. There's a lot more positions available than there were certainly not long ago.
Yeah. And I think the other part of this is one, we talked about higher cost of capital, right? So if they wanted to expand, that's going to cost them quite a bit of money. And businesses look at all this. And they also aren't sure what's going to happen with rates over the next few years. So how can you put together a 3 or 5 year expansion plan if you don't know what you're borrowing against?
Well,
and you don't know what your labor costs are going to be.
That's a heck of a point. And Jerry, let's pull up that credit card chart, because I think this is an important thing. Now, I'm focusing for a moment on the, call it Main Street. Now, these are consumer loans. Obviously, the biggest piece of this are credit cards, because the revolving loans in the commercial banks kind of did pull back a little bit here. So I would say this is predominantly credit card debt. Now, what's really most important to on this chart, guys, is this is 1 year. Really, really important to note that this is 1 year. So you look at credit card debt, it is at an all-time high. Now let's take a look at a longer period of time, Jerry. So let's take a look at that one. So this goes back to 2021, and we were monitoring this. And what does this tell? What should this tell you? If you looked at personal savings rates, you would see those going down, and you would see credit card debt going up. So obviously, we reported on this channel when credit card debt went up a couple of years ago, and then it dropped ironically a little bit, and now it's going up again. And I do want to mention that we're looking at rates in the 20s here. So when you have $1 trillion+ of credit card debt at over 20%, talk about an anchor. And so this is what Trump addressed this at Davos. He said this is an anchor. This specifically is he called it usury. There's usury laws against this. This specifically is taking people from being able to afford stuff, right? Now, obviously, there's a whole bunch of other things, but you can't deny that well over 20% of $1 trillion is a lot of money.
Yeah, and you have to really look at that consumer spending, right? Because that's the key to all of this. In 2020, people had more money to spend because they weren't going out, they weren't doing a lot. Now, life has gone back to normal. We have inflation.